Welcome to the Late Life Lesbian. My name is Emily Better. I am the Late Life Lesbian life coach. And on my channel, I share my story and journey of realizing I was a lesbian while in a relationship with a man. And I help other women navigate their journeys of realizing this too. Today, I am interviewing Melissa Giberson, who's the author of Late Bloomer. And she too went through this journey. And so we're going to have a chat and just have her share some of her experience as well. I'm going to go ahead and have her come join us. Hello.
Hi, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, doing well. How are you?
Doing well. It's nice to see you.
You too. I know. It's been a while. We tried to schedule this and so nice
Life
to
keeps getting in the way.
life does that sometimes.
Yes, it does. That's another whole book. Life.
Right?
Although I wove it into mine. Life does get in the way.
It does.
And
It
we have to
can.
pivot and adjust and keep going.
I know. That's a huge part of this. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned. Like nothing ever stays the same. Life is always changing. You get into a groove and you think that like it's all going well and you got it all figured out. And then all of a sudden, you get curveballs thrown at you and things change. So
Right.
yeah.
It's funny. Yesterday, I've been very social media light, but I
Mm,
pop in now and then. There's a couple of people. It's the only way I stay in touch with them. And I have cats. So of course I get all the cat videos and I
yeah.
love those. And I share them with with my kids. And there was one that said something about how when cats are falling, they just go loose. And that's why they can land, is that,
Mm,
everything just loosens up and they kind of go with it. Otherwise it would be like, if
yeah.
they tensed up. And it's a
Yep.
great lesson in life, right? We should be like cats. You know,
Yeah.
we just
Well,
have to kind of
it's
go with
that
it.
same like, the more you resist, it persists, like all of that. Like, the more you can learn to loosen up and go with the flow, a lot of times easier things go. It's can be hard.
Yeah.
So it might still be a rough landing, even for the cats at times, but yeah.
Yeah, they'll shake it off and go, what was
Yeah.
that?
Okay. Yeah.
But then walk away and, where's my food bowl?
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
and I'm going
That's
to
so
try
funny.
really hard to keep the cats from breaking in. One in particular, Zoe has a way of breaking in. She's a
Oh,
little
that's
bit of
funny.
an attention whore.
Uh-huh.
But, I had an interview last week in a smaller space and there was no way I could keep her.
Yeah.
It was literally one room. But so I told the person, and don't you know, it was the first time that Zoe like slept through it. At the end, the woman's like, I'm so disappointed I didn't meet Zoe.
Uh
I'm
I was
like,
like, my cat's laying on my desk right here. So like one
there
of
you
them
go.
is. She likes to come in here and hang out. We have four cats of our own, plus we foster. And so
Oh
we
my.
currently have three foster kittens and a pregnant mom right now too.
Oh
So
wow. Now
yeah,
that's a busy
we
house.
really like cats.
There you go. That's a busy house. Good for you. I would have more. They keep telling me no. Um,
I
you know,
know.
I
We
don't
kind of
know.
had to stop it. Like we're like, we'll keep fostering, but like, I don't think we can personally own more than the four. I think that's probably enough, but
Yeah, I don't think I can foster because I think I would end up keeping them all.
it's hard. It's hard to let them go. You kind of get into a groove. It's another thing that you just start to like teach yourself and
Okay.
realize like, you get more and it kind of turns into this cycle where you're like, I know I'm doing a good thing and I have to let them go. And our fourth one was a foster fail. Not actually intentionally, but
Hmm.
just didn't get adopted. And after that, we were like, we just can't. Like, we can't keep anymore. We're going to keep doing this, but we have to let them go. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And then the only thing for me is I can remind myself last week when I was driving back. So I'm in New Jersey right now,
Mm,
but I'm in between usually Provincetown in Cape Cod and here. And I was there for an extended time. So I take the cats with me.
gotcha.
And
Yeah.
Zoe, of course, the attention whore, would ride shotgun with me. And
Oh,
I do the GABA, and she must have had an adverse, an opposite impact because instead of
oh,
knocking her out, she got aggressive. She was crazy wild the whole time.
oh my
And we
gosh.
were barely a half hour into the trip. And I said, never again. You're never coming again.
Oh my
So I couldn't
gosh.
imagine doing more because,
Yeah.
she's great, but that was, I had a 6 hour drive with this cat who was
Gosh.
just screaming. You know, and
Oh,
I had to return a phone call, and when I thought she was calm for a minute, I left a message, and when I finally talked to that person days later, she's like, "I heard the cat." I'm like, "I know. I was awful." Or I'll talk to my daughter who's in London. She's like, "Is that Zoe?" I'm like, "Who else?" Like, I said, "Zoe, they can hear you in London. Quiet down."
so funny.
So I couldn't imagine more.
Oh, see, there she is.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Oh,
Stop it.
sweetie.
Stop it. Oh yeah, she's a mess. She
Well,
likes
at
to
least she's
define
back
boundaries.
there. Zoe
Yeah.
would come right here, like,
Uh,
look at me. Like
yeah.
when I'm in a writing class, right there. I have to turn her.
This
Yeah.
is I'm on a small little like table and I don't think she can actually get up here. So that's
Okay,
yeah.
got it, got it.
But
That's how
yeah,
it is in
that's the
Provincetown.
only safe, like saving grace. So yeah.
That they're
Oh,
great though. They're great.
oh
So
yeah. Yeah, I agree. But well, anyways, yeah, let's I could talk I could spend all day talking about cats, but
let's do it.
I
Let's
don't
do
think
it.
that's
Let's
why, people will want to come watch this video. But maybe, who knows, turn it into a whole other thing. But yeah, so I mean, you went through this journey talking about like I did a little intro before you got on, was just saying, you have a book and you share your story, but you went through this journey too,
Mhm.
living the dream of what thought was married and kids and the whole thing. And yeah,
Yeah.
had an awakening. So
I did, and I love the cat.
I don't-
I love it. It's fantastic. My story, yeah, I've heard so many stories, obviously, throughout my entire journey and still.
yeah.
And so there's a lot of through lines, there's a lot of universal themes. My story in particular, I think is a perfect storm for me. So the first leg of that storm are the universal themes.
Mm,
It's checking the boxes. There was no role models. There was no language.
yeah.
There was no permission in my case. There was no permission to
Mm,
explore or to think about anything else. This
mhm,
was your path. This was your life, right? The
mhm,
college, go to college. That was really stressed in my house. Both
yeah.
my parents would say to this day, their biggest regret was not going to college. So they
Mhm,
made sure in my house of growing up that that was a thing. Nothing else was a theme,
mhm.
sexuality, don't do this, don't do that, but go to
Did
college.
did you have a religious upbringing too, or no?
So not through them,
Okay.
so I talk about it in the book. I was raised in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood.
Mhm.
We were not Orthodox.
Okay.
My parents claimed to be conservative Jews, but because I have a sister, were girls, there was really no practicing of it.
Gotcha.
And,
Okay.
so it was kind of a contrast, a kind of a mixed message. And I got the message because my mother outright said it. If you were a boy, you would have had a Jewish education.
Mm, mhm.
Okay, so there's that gender
Yeah.
issue. There's that little bit of, okay, because I'm a girl, um, but I watched Judaism around me every day. And
Mhm.
I was, enthralled by it because it just seemed like something I didn't have in my life. There seemed to be some structure. I didn't have that in my life. There was a sense of belonging to them. They knew what
Mhm.
they were doing. They knew what they had. I didn't have that. I was always looking for that sense of belonging, which I think would come out later for me in this journey.
Yeah.
Um, so I knew I had to go to college. That was, there was no question about that. And then the rest of it was the same message a lot of women get. You get married, you meet this nice guy,
Mhm.
you have a family.
Mhm.
And I was set on doing that. For me, the perfect storm was my parents went through a really ugly divorce.
Mm,
And
okay.
everything that you can do wrong, they did
Mm.
successfully. They did everything wrong successfully.
Was this when
Um,
you were a kid
so
or
this is
when you were after?
when I was a
Okay.
kid.
Okay.
So a lot of trauma with that I couldn't
Mhm.
identify at the time, but one thing led to another, and those trauma seeds were being planted in me, right?
Mhm.
And so the perfect storm for me was, checking the boxes, like all the women say, you got to check the boxes.
Mm,
But for me, it was recreating that childhood I didn't have, right?
yeah.
I was going to do it right. I was going to do it
Yeah.
better. And I had this death fear of getting married, getting divorced, because I knew there'd be kids. So I never wanted to put my kids through that.
Yeah,
And to
I think this
me,
is
it's
great. I think so. I would say I think this is great sharing this because this is a huge thing that I feel so many women go through of this utter fear of putting their kids through this, and just the stigma that society has also created that if kids come from divorced parents, like basically their lives are going to be terrible and you're screwing up your kids. And so yeah, I don't want to interrupt you, but keep going. I just
no.
think it's great to talk about this because this
I
is a
don't think
different
people talk
perspective.
about it enough.
Mm-mm, yeah.
Trauma seeds they're all different kinds and they get planted in us. And,
Hmm.
we make choices without necessarily knowing, without
Yeah.
tracing them back until we go through a journey or writing a book and we start thinking about why did I react like that? Or why was I so, there was so
Hmm.
much evidence. Why was I so resistant? And I trace it back and that's where it was. It was I was successful in creating a life for my kids that I always wanted.
Yeah.
We had that life. We had it, the picture in the frame. It looked good on paper. Everything was great. What was missing? What was
Yeah.
missing? And I went looking outside. I went looking into education. I went looking in religion. I went looking in
Hmm.
community. And nothing was quite fitting the bill. I never looked inside.
Yeah.
And that I've heard that, from people, everybody's doing their thing to make it work.
Hmm.
And, and my story is not different. Married a great guy, kids were great. We had no major things. But then when you look back at it, like, well, yeah, that didn't quite work. And that didn't quite work, but
Uh-huh.
the big picture on paper looked like, you guys are great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
You
And
know,
I think again, that's like when you are comparing to things you hear and see in society, you're like, well, our relationship is way better than that, or like, oh,
right,
we have some of our issues, but it's not like that. And so you
right.
think you have a good thing, and yeah. Hmm.
And then you start looking at, what's not there, and those are good things. He works hard, he's
Yeah.
hands-on with the kids, I'm physically safe, right? I never worry about being in an abusive relationship. Emotionally, yeah, that connection wasn't there. And,
Hmm.
that's when you start going like making friends and,
Hmm.
you connect emotionally. And I had that. Um, so that's my story was this perfect storm that kept me from not only from seeing things that maybe other people, when it was all said and done and the dust cleared and I started coming out and I would tell people and they're like, yeah, I
Yeah.
could see that. And I'm like, okay, you hear it once, okay. You hear it twice, you hear it three times. I'm like, am I the only one? And you
Yeah.
wonder what is that dust, bowl that you're in that you can't see?
Hmm.
What was it from Peanuts? Is it Pigpen who's got the
Oh yeah,
little
a little
dust
like
swirl?
cloud.
Like
Yeah.
you can't see, but other people can. And
Yeah.
they're not surprised.
Hmm.
And for me, even when I was immersed in it, even when there's no question, I had these feelings, euphoric, it was joyful, it was amazing, it was, heavens opened up, angels were singing. Oh my God, this feels amazing. I can't be gay.
Yeah.
I'm married,
Yeah.
I've got kids, and it's to me, it's remarkable how the body will protect itself,
Hmm.
right? Because if I was to say, oh, by the way, I think I'm gay,
Hmm.
that would have unraveled a lifetime of doing what I was supposed to be doing
Hmm.
and this underlying fear, this underbelly of fear of, well, if I say that I'm gay now, well, I've just welcomed my kids into my, childhood trauma.
Hmm.
So for me, that was the perfect storm. And then so my story, I put it all in there. I did not
Yeah.
glamorize my story. The journey is messy, I think, for most people. And I didn't want to sugarcoat it. I didn't want to glamorize it
I think that's
because that's
awesome.
not fair.
Hmm.
And part of it was I was so overwhelmed during it because you're juggling. Life is happening.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm,
you're going through this change within yourself. What does this mean? Sometimes you're fighting it. At some point, when you get to acceptance, but you're still managing logistics. You know, you're still
mhm.
managing the kids, you're managing the house, you're managing people are getting sick, people are dying, money issues, fear.
Yeah.
Um, all of that comes into play. You're adulting. I mean, you
Mhm.
know, what are those memes? I don't want to adult today. Like, yeah, I hear you. And I had to do this. And at some point, I ended up kind of single parenting, you
Mm,
know, um, he never checked out from the kids, but he had to check out from me for a while, which left me making all the decisions. So the
mhm.
overwhelm and the exhaustion, you go into survival mode.
Yeah. So how long was it from when you sort of made your realization, like, oh my gosh, I think I actually might, like women, to like, and I know your story is a little bit different because your husband served you divorce papers,
He
correct?
did. He did.
Okay. So I was like, I kind of want to get into that because I think that's a whole other aspect that a lot of women don't experience. I think they're the ones that typically feel like it becomes put on them to be the
Mm.
one to have to like bring up divorce or talk about that. So yeah, I'd love to know more, like have you share a little bit more about that because I think it's a completely different take on things. But yeah, how long do you feel like you really kept this inside and was kind of at war with this before allowing it to kind of come out and embrace more of it and work towards living that authentic self?
You know, um, it wasn't as long as I think some people like to think, because the journey that I write about,
Mm,
um, I cover a decade's time because I do it by following the kids' milestones. Because
okay.
for me,
Yeah.
everything is about the kids. And because I was so tied into this life as a mom and protecting these kids, everything, kind of flows through where it started, where they were in their lives. And then they were in middle school, and then you
Mm,
go into the high school and all those logistics that come in, and then college and, all the life stuff. So I was immersed in these feelings for a few months,
mm,
didn't stop, didn't question them, didn't understand them, missed everything. Like really that swirl around me. I had no idea
mhm.
what was happening. And that's when the body protects yourself. My body wasn't letting me think about it or go there.
Yeah.
And then when I had this crashing moment, the first time that question popped through, somehow that question escaped and go, wait a minute, am I gay?
Uh-huh.
Then it took months after that of, just finding help, trying to figure this out, resisting, can't be.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just her, like and I've heard that so many times. Maybe it's
Yeah.
just her, maybe it's
Or
Maybelline,
maybe I'm bored. Maybe it's just a phase. Maybe like, the
right.
romance has sort of died in our marriage and I'm looking for something else. And yeah, all
And
of
I do
these sort of,
address
yeah.
that, like,
Oh
because you
yeah.
have to,
Yeah.
look at everything,
Hmm.
because, these are good people. These are people you love.
Hmm.
I loved him. I love my kids. And, I didn't want to upset this apple cart in
Mm.
this way. And again, speaking from those roots of trauma was still in me
Yeah.
of can't get divorced, can't have an
Mhm.
ugly divorce. So all of that is lurking in the background this whole time. Um, so by the time I was kind of like, it was put in my face, I'm pushing it away, I'm pushing it away, I'm pushing it away. And finally, one of the women that had shown up, thankfully, to help me, stranger, I was reaching out to anybody at that point, help me. And keeping it to myself with the exception of, seeking out strangers, she finally said, and I can hear her voice in my head, Melissa, you're head over heels in love with a woman. What more proof do you need? And I
Mm.
went, oh, well, there's that, you know. Um, but and for that moment, I heard her, but I still needed to test. So I
Yeah.
needed to put myself out into the community and test that other hypothesis. Well, maybe it's just her, right? That
Hmm.
woman,
Hmm.
and could I be attracted to somebody else? Because I never was before.
Yeah.
I didn't look back and go, oh, I remember having crushes. I didn't.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
remember having people that I wanted to be like.
Yeah.
Not that I wanted to be with them. I didn't have any physical attraction that I could recognize, but it's like, oh, I like her confidence. I like her style.
Hmm.
I like her as I got older. I like her solitude. You know, all of those things were appealing to me. So it was harder. I never look back and go, oh, I guess you can say had a crush. I didn't.
Hmm.
I had crushes on um, Tim Curry in Rocky Horror Picture Show. I was in love with Captain Kirk from Star Trek.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the Chips guys, or the Emergency. I'm born in, grew up in the 70s, so all those shows were
Hmm.
appealing to me, all the guys. There was something about that appealed to me. But
Yeah.
by the time I answered the question, and I took myself to places where there was a thriving LGBTQ community. So I knew that odds were, if there was a woman that went by me, for some
Hmm.
reason that made a difference to me. Could I be attracted? And I was. So I'm like, all right,
Mm.
it's me.
Yeah.
Right. So that took a matter of months after the months of just being immersed in it and being clueless,
Yeah.
uh, which is hard for people to understand. How could you not know that? That's the power of the body. That's the
Hmm.
power of
Hmm.
the body saying, don't go there.
Yeah.
Don't go there. You can't do this. Um,
Yeah.
and it's a hard line to walk. Uh,
I think that that's
I
huge.
heard my New York accent with that. I don't always hear it, but I heard it there. That's funny.
I could hear it.
Oh, people hear it everywhere. I don't always hear it every now and then. I just
That's
heard
funny.
it.
Oh, okay. So then talk about, so yeah, you're gonna live this life and not put your kids through divorce, and then your husband's the one that serves you. Can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, what happened was, yes, once I answered the question and put a period
Hmm.
at the end, okay, it's me. And there
Yeah.
was this sense of relief for a moment. Oh, well, that explains it, right?
Hmm.
That explains why. That's what was missing. And, for a minute, it felt good to have that answer, right?
Hmm.
And, but there was still that fear
Yeah.
because
Oh yeah.
my kids
Uh-huh.
are there, right? There's still that fear. And he's there and he didn't do anything wrong,
Yeah.
so now his life has to change. And he was really supportive early on, and we
Hmm.
worked together. It was very amicable. We had an in-home separation. He needed to move on, and I got that. And
Yeah.
I understood that. And I needed to learn what this was about. What does it
Hmm.
mean to be this other person? What does it mean to be in this community? And oh my God, dating? I mean, I never really dated. I mean, he and I
Yeah.
were together for so long, and then dating a woman, like
I
there was so many nuances and so many new things
feel like it's almost like
that,
going through high school again, like
which
a
wasn't great the first time.
yeah, but it's almost
Yeah,
like this rebirth of like puberty and adolescence and like
right.
self-discovery. It's like doing it all over again.
But
But
yet
yeah.
now you're doing it, and now
Yeah.
you're a mom, and now you've got
Yeah.
kids, and now the adulting thing, right? And now you've got all of these other things in play. You can't just be
Yeah.
16 and
Yep.
figuring it out.
Mhm.
There's consequences, there's repercussions, there's other people.
Yep.
So we had agreed early on that we wouldn't get legally divorced.
Mm.
He was going to do his thing. I was going to do my thing. This was all new. We had to uncouple ourselves as a married
Mhm.
couple. And my goal and my intention was to come together as co-parents
Yeah.
and model that for the kids. That's what I wanted. I said, okay, I can make this right. Right. So, I didn't walk the path I thought I was going to walk. We took a little bit of a detour, a lot of bit of
Mhm.
a detour, but we can still do this. And I had people modeling that for me. I had people that I knew were doing it. So it wasn't this
Mhm.
pipe dream.
Yeah.
And it was so important to me because this was the only way. If I was that cat that was going to land on my feet, then okay, let's pivot, right? Let's adjust,
Mhm.
let's shift. And we were doing it until, you do it until something goes wrong.
Mhm.
And once he started going out there, he started getting these messages and he started, and, he was picking and choosing, I imagine, the story
Mhm.
that he told. And he was having this narrative from people, and
Yeah.
it wasn't accurate, but it was also the only way that he could make a bit of a break. And I remember somebody telling me sometimes you have to blow things up before you can rebuild them.
Yeah.
And I understood it in my head, but I was deathly afraid of it
Yep.
because my kids were there, right? And it was
Mhm.
hurtful. Um, but looking back, he needed that he didn't have that epiphany the way I had. Somehow he needed to make that break. And I get it, and I can look back and have nothing but empathy. And even then in my head, I knew this was painful and this wasn't fair
Mhm.
to him.
Mhm.
But the what happened was what turned out to be a good working relationship took another detour, took a
Yeah.
different detour. And, he tried talking about divorce once, and it came at the exact same time, literally within minutes of a family crisis.
No. Okay.
So, there was no urgency for the divorce. We had already agreed we wouldn't, I would have
Mhm.
gladly had another conversation, but unless you're getting married tomorrow, what's
Yeah.
the urgency right now? And I couldn't manage it. I couldn't manage what was happening. I couldn't manage my exhaustion, my overwhelm.
Mhm.
And I literally was just minutes into a major family crisis with my mom.
Mm.
And that
Mhm.
needed my attention. And so I couldn't do it. And so it went away. It never came up again.
Mm.
Unbeknownst to me, it didn't come up for me until one morning. Some guy from the sheriff's office shows up
Mm.
literally at my driveway and hands me papers
Oh,
that had been initiated months before. I didn't know.
yeah.
Um, and that would create another trauma in me because it's like all of this is happening. I felt like I was ambushed
Yeah.
and I was angry and I was hurt and I feared for my kids. I feared for that worst nightmare was now
Mhm.
coming to fruition,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so he and I, broke apart even more. What was already splintering
Mhm.
then broke apart. And I had such, and people didn't, why such a reaction? Didn't you see this coming? Like, well, no, because the body was protecting me. Number one, we had talked about it. We had a sort of an agreement. And then there's
Mhm.
that hope. And,
Mhm.
there's that hope that things are going to get better.
Yeah.
So, when I talk about my book being and my journey being messy, I added all of that. There's a
Yeah.
lot of grieving in this,
Oh, yeah. I talk
right?
about that so much for both parties. It's a
Absolutely.
loss. It is
Yeah.
it's I think almost comparable to a death. It's the death of a relationship. It's
Yeah.
a death of a life and a future and an expectation that you had created of what things were going to be and look like.
Right.
And there's a
Right.
lot of mourning that goes through that, that you have to get to the point of acceptance. But anger, I think anger is a huge one,
Mm.
from the men or even the women being angry at themselves and not
Yeah.
knowing this sooner, but, men being angry that they're feeling blindsided, it's just, but, you got to work through those stages and understand this is part of it. Like it's just part of the process. And
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I agree completely. And you get it. And that's why I didn't take it out of the book because it wouldn't
Yeah.
have been fair,
Yeah.
because to glamorize it like, oh, and then I found out this, and
Yeah.
and then that's not the reality. A lot of times it's two steps forward, one back, but sometimes it's a step forward and three
Mhm.
back,
Yeah.
and that stays with you because with each detour we hit, there's another grief,
Yep.
but there's also hope.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of
Hmm.
hope. I think the two kind of run side by side a lot.
Yeah.
You're gonna have grief, there's gotta have to be some hope. Otherwise, what do you have?
Yeah. I think that
You know,
that's even for it's like such a hard position for women to be in. I think it's a little different for the men in the situation. but I know a lot of women that I work with, and even how I felt, it was like this mix of I'm excited and so thrilled for myself that I finally put all this together and figured it out, and that I'm getting the opportunity to be my true self, but like all of this like guilt and shame and like just emotional processing of, but I broke my family apart, and I, don't have the life that I had planned to have. And I got married with the intention of being married once and that being
Mhm.
like the person I share the rest of my life with, and so it's this like inner battle where then you almost feel guilty for feeling happy, but then yeah, it's,
It's a stew.
yeah.
It is a stew of emotions, and you keep coming back and you keep visiting that because it keeps getting
Hmm.
stirred up.
Yeah.
One reason or another, something's going to keep stirring that cauldron of
Hmm.
this stew of emotion. So you can have it all. You can have sadness, you can have
Yeah.
fear, you can be worried about logistical things.
Hmm.
You have that grief for any number of reasons, but you can have the joy. You can
Hmm.
have that, now I know,
Yeah.
what was missing, or the promise of what could be. And
Hmm.
that, of course, runs side by side with that fear
Yeah.
of, I blew up my life. I thought this was going to be. And, suddenly somebody came in, erased your blackboard, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, you go up and you're looking at it going, oh my God,
Uh-huh.
what's going
Uh-huh.
to happen now? So there's a lot of variables, a lot of factors. It is definitely a stew. And at any given point, something's going to rise to the top of that. And it's going to be
Hmm.
the joy, and the excitement. Some days it's going to be the sadness and the grief.
Yeah.
Um, and then you're
Yeah.
always watching out for me. Are my kids okay? Are my kids okay?
Oh, that's
And
huge too.
that
Yeah.
was the
I want my
driving
kids to
force for
be
me.
okay.
Are my
Yeah.
kids okay? What have I done? Are they okay?
Hmm.
And, always with that watchful eye.
Yeah. When did you so I mean, after all of this and it kind of really blew things up, did you guys ever get back to like a more healthy co-parenting state, like after separation, or how did that end up playing out?
So the divorce, sadly, again, I said my worst nightmare came true.
Hmm.
So the divorce process was a really long time.
Hmm.
It was 2 years, and we were just not clicking. I was angry.
Yeah.
He was angry. There were choices I wish he didn't make. I
Hmm.
can understand, you know, now his feelings,
Yeah.
but I don't condone the choices that he made along the way. So I was single parenting. I was doing all of the logistical stuff. He was
Hmm.
the fun dad when he had them, and I was knee deep in paperwork and applications and college searching and all the planning. Um, so for a long time, no, we had no contact.
Hmm.
He was with the kids, in terms of being in touch with them, but not with me. We had nothing. And most recently, really like brand new, it's still like new car smell. My son recently graduated from college.
Aw.
And that's the last of, I think the book ends when he's going off to
Oh,
college.
okay. Okay. Yeah.
So, spoiler alert, he goes to college, and he now just recently graduated. Now, when he graduated high school, it was COVID. So there was
Oh, yeah.
he graduated at the kitchen table. There was no
Yeah.
ceremony. My daughter didn't have her college graduation.
Mm.
Everything was canceled. It was the same year.
Yeah.
They would have graduated at the same time, him high school,
Okay.
her college. And so all of that, I didn't have to, deal with that, right?
Hmm.
Because it was awkward at her high school graduation because,
Gotcha.
you
Yeah.
know, we
Both
were
were
on the
there and
outs,
yeah.
and, I didn't want to run in, and it was still kind of newish,
Hmm.
people around the community. What do they know? What are they going to talk about? I don't like attention put on me. And all of this was just new and awkward.
Yeah.
But now with the passage of time, and my son was graduating, and there would be a graduation.
Hmm.
And I reached out to him and I said, can we meet?
Hmm.
And so we did. And
Oh.
so because I didn't want it to be awkward for my
Yeah.
son. This
Yeah.
was a big milestone. This was a big piece for him, and I didn't want this hanging over him.
Hmm.
I didn't want it hanging over me selfishly, but I didn't
Yeah,
want
but still.
anything to
Hmm.
ruin, my son's experience. And he earned it, he deserved it, he should have it, especially, after everything that they had gone through as innocent bystanders,
Yeah.
whatever I can do to make it right, I want to do.
Yeah.
So my ex and I got together about a month or a few weeks before,
Hmm.
and it was really lovely. It was
Oh,
really, really nice. And we've stayed in touch ever since. I've seen him many times. Graduation went really, really well. And
good.
it's really nice to have that ability to
Hmm.
co-parent now because life is
Hmm.
still happening.
Yeah.
My daughter got hurt,
Yeah.
and my daughter, so I'm texting. I had to go over to London to,
Hmm.
help my daughter. And I'm texting my ex and, keeping him what's going on. My daughter came over here for graduation. She ended up with an injury.
Mm.
I'm texting him. I have my co-parent. So that's the
Yeah.
one side. That's the thing I always wanted. And it was so nice to be able to have that person. The other part of it is there's one person in the world. There's one person in the world that's never going to tell me, you talk about your kids too much.
Yeah.
Because he gets it, because he feels the same level
Yeah.
of joy or the shared memories or the pride. And to
Hmm.
have that one person, this most important part of your life being parents, it's really nice to be able to have him to share that with. And
Yeah.
especially when you go through milestone times, right?
Oh,
My
yeah.
daughter has a
Uh-huh.
big birthday coming up. My son graduated. For me, I'm the sentimental one. So
Yep.
I'm replaying everything. And it's nice to be able to share that with him.
Hmm.
Because,
Hmm.
I don't think I'm overstepping boundaries if I say, hey, remember that
Kids.
time?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that's been really nice. So
Good.
yes, the
I'm
long
happy
answer to
to
the
hear that.
question is
Yeah.
we've now recently reconnected as co-parents,
Good.
um, which feels good.
Yeah. Good.
You
I'm
know,
happy to hear that for you. Like
yeah.
it takes time. I've heard that for some people.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
like you said, always that hope that eventually things will fall into place and be able to
Yes.
have that. So,
Yeah.
how do you feel the kids were with, Anna? Because that was your biggest fear of them
Mm.
going through this and having that experience. How do you feel? I mean, I know you're having to kind of speak for them, but yeah, have you had those conversations, or have they seemed like they've been okay? Or yeah.
I think they've landed, we don't have that many conversations. It's
Mm-hmm.
more a matter of just living life.
Yeah.
And, again, they both have done really, really well. They both graduated college. She's living her best life in London. He just accepted his first after college
Yeah.
job, um, doing really, really well, in their own relationships.
Awesome.
They have an amazing relationship together. The three of us have a great relationship. They do really well with me and my partner. They
Mm.
do well with my ex, and he's with somebody now.
Okay.
So if
Great.
you look at all those individual pieces, um, it's really good. They're
Good.
okay. They've landed, and the biggest thing for me was this book is very personal
Yeah.
and I put a lot in it. And a lot of people say, you're really brave, you put a lot in it. And I did it for a reason because it's my story.
Mm-hmm.
And, I put it all out there, but I also did it under my own name, which
Mm-hmm.
means I've exposed my kids a little bit. Well, I don't use their names. It's not that difficult,
Yeah.
they're my kids. Um, but both those kids showed up for me for my book launch.
Aw.
She came from London. He came from where he was in school in Maryland. And they made the trip all the way to the tip of Cape Cod. You can't
No.
go any more, than that. And they both said they wanted to be there to support me and that they were proud of me. And that's all I ever wanted. I wanted my kids to be proud of
Like,
me,
making me tear up.
you
But
know.
yeah,
And
that's
so to have them there
yeah.
spoke volumes. So for all the conversations we didn't have,
Mhm.
they showed up. And I talk about that in my book a lot, about how we show up for one another, and
Mhm.
that they showed up for me, um, just says it all.
Yeah,
It really
yeah.
does. And I will
That was
always
gonna
show up
kinda
for
be
them.
my next question, because but I think you kinda answered it of, many women are so afraid this is going to, like, pull their kids away from them, and they'll
Yeah.
lose that connection. So it seemed like you said they've been there, they've supported you, they've shown up for you. So
Right. But that was
was
a
there
huge fear of mine. That
yeah,
was,
yeah.
blowing up my life. Am I gonna lose them all? Am I gonna lose my kids?
Mhm.
I hear that, I feel that.
Yeah.
That resonates so much. So that's why to have them there at that
Mm.
moment when of all things, I didn't write a children's book. I didn't write,
Yeah.
I wrote my story of how their life changed
Yeah,
essentially, right? Or their life changed as a result of, and still they showed up.
yeah.
And still they showed up.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so they're good people. They're good
Mhm.
humans. And my ex and I, for all the things we did wrong, you know, I think somehow in the mix of all of it, we did something right.
Mhm.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
um,
amazing, beautiful.
yeah.
Um, so with all of this, I think this is the thing too, any regrets, anything that wish you would have done differently, or, has all of this and blowing up your family been worth it? Because I think that's what everybody asks. What if I regret this? What if it's the biggest mistake of my life? What if, yeah, yeah, there's all those scary what ifs, that
Yeah.
fear, that wants to
Mhm.
hold us in place. So what's your take on that?
There's always going to be a what if.
Yeah.
There's always, and
Yeah.
the reason that I did what I did was because there was a what if.
Mhm.
Because the same woman that kind of put it in my face, that said, "Melissa, like, what more proof do you need?" And I was struggling. She had asked me, so I'm a person that needs to think about things and process, and, I am definitely a turtle in a hare's world, right? I need
Mhm.
to slow
Mhm.
things down. And she said, "Don't think about this. Just immediately answer the question. If you do nothing in 25 years, will you regret it?" I've
Mhm.
never answered anything so fast in all my life. It came to me.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was the what if. I had such a fear of regretting not doing it. And it didn't seem fair
Yeah.
because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? You can't unknow what you know. So once I knew what I knew, would it have been fair to him? Would it
Mhm.
have been fair to my kids? Um,
Mhm. Oh, I talk about that so much. It's you're terrified of hurting them, like, but is it still fair to just go on living with this lie, essentially, like going through the motions and putting on this happy face, but it not being who you really are? Is that
right.
truly fair? And is that a good example? Like, is that the example you want to set that your kids should be doing too? And
Exactly. Well, that
yeah,
ultimately was the other piece of it, is I always imagined, what if, there's another what if.
yeah,
What if my kids came to me
yeah,
with some existential crisis of whatever nature, didn't have to necessarily be sexuality, it could have been something else.
anything. Hmm.
What if they came to me and said, "What do?" I would always guide them to
Hmm.
be their truest self, because
Yep,
you can't go wrong, because that's who you are, to
yep.
be authentic. And who am I then to know that I would guide them that way and not do it myself, not walk that
Yes.
walk
Oh, yes.
for all the challenges, for all the difficulty. My hope was, in the end, when the smoke cleared again, right? And there was many smoke bombs and lots of smoke to clear, that they would look back and say, "She walked the walk." Now,
Hmm.
are there guarantees? No.
Yep.
There were no guarantees, but it is that game of what if, but you have
Yeah.
what ifs on either side. And each time, so I always tell people, it's hard. Either one is hard. You could try to
Hmm.
keep it together. That could be
Hmm.
hard. You can
Hmm.
blow it up and hope the pieces land, and that's hard. Choose your
Hmm.
hard.
Yep.
It's not that one way is easy. They're all hard.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I I've said almost the exact words with that, just that's a huge thing too. That if my, and that, sorry, if for me, if my son had ever come to me with anything, just like what you said,
Mm,
I was like, of course I would want him to do what's right for him and be him, whatever that is. And yeah, same as you, guide him to do that. And I ask a lot of women that when they, come with this inner struggle, I said, well, what would you tell your kid? And they're like, I tell them to be who they are. I said, okay, then why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you setting that example? If you would want your kids to do that, why aren't you? And usually that's a huge sort of wake up call
right.
of,
Yeah.
and I think it's another one of those regrets. Like if your kids come to you at some point and find out you didn't walk the walk, how are you going to feel about that? Are
Mm,
you going to feel good like you did the right thing? Or do you think that might even cause more distance because then they almost feel lied to, that
exactly.
you told them to do something, but you can't do it yourself. And I mean, for me as a mom, I'm like, I always want to be the example. And I'm like, and
Mm,
like you said, you don't know. It's still a gamble because you don't know. But I'm like, at least at
right.
the end of the day, I can know I was honest, I was
Right.
truthful, I did the best that I could, and I tried the best to live by example. And I,
At the end
I
of the
feel like that would
day,
be no regrets. So yeah,
right. At the end of the day, you're human.
yeah,
So there
uh-huh.
are no guarantees. And, when I answered the question before, there's lots of things I would have wished had been done differently,
Hmm.
operating from this place of overwhelm and in survival mode and not knowing and this fear. Um, so the only thing I can do, because I can't undo that, I can only understand it now.
Yeah.
The only thing I can do is show up as human and own it
Hmm.
and do better
Hmm.
and model that there is no such thing as perfection. I never, you know, sought perfection. Um, I don't like to, I try to avoid being embarrassed, but I said it's different. So I work really hard, for that. But it's not about perfection. And we're all going to screw up. We're all going to make
Hmm.
mistakes. Some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff, it's big, it's heavy, it's unprecedented.
Hmm.
Do the best you can with what you've got, where you are. And you know what? If you get more information later, you know, own it. If you screw
Hmm.
up, model that. Say, hey, yeah,
Yeah.
I own this.
Yeah.
I could have done this better. And
Hmm.
I want to make amends or, whatever it is, you know, own it, show up as human
Hmm.
because that's the permission, and that's the thing. Like my parents never did that. My
Yeah.
parents still haven't done that. I could have done that better, or, like, they never did that. And
Yeah.
that's at the least, that's what I want to do for my kids is I'm not perfect. I'm human.
Hmm.
And I'm going to own my screw ups and
Hmm.
I'm going to try to do better going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So,
that's awesome. Something I've said that I like also I learned going through this is just that saying like the truth will set you free. I feel like has never applied more than like going through this journey. Like the freedom and the peace and the contentness that I feel now after going
mm,
through, like I said, it's messy and it's hard and there's mistakes and it's emotional. But I feel like once you get through sort of to that other side of it all and the dust settles and the pieces kind of rebuild, it's like a freedom and it's sharing that truth. It's showing up and being honest about who you are and owning those things. So would
yeah.
you like do you feel that same way now, like with where you are in life, or how would you
You know,
do you feel that applies or yeah, from your
Yeah,
experience?
it's funny because, life right now is so challenging and for so many reasons. And it's like, yes, come out, be your authentic self. But there's this like whole contingency of people that are like trying to shove you down. It's like, well,
Mhm.
wait, I just got here. And
Yeah.
it's like what, 500, over 500 bills, against just this community.
Mhm.
And, for me though, that fires me up. It's like, no,
Mhm.
no, 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 no. This is not okay. And I'm gonna fight, not just for me, but for everybody that's been here, that is here, that went through this challenge to get here. And for those people that are, this is ongoing. This isn't like,
Mhm.
no, I think this is dying down. No, this is ongoing. This is always happening. This has always happened
Yeah.
before. And this will continue to happen. and we are ambassadors. And
Mhm.
so we need to take up that baton and pass it along and hold that mantle and put ourselves out there. I think so. I know it's scary. I do. I'm not preaching. I know it's scary, but I feel like I have a responsibility, and it comes with the
Mhm.
fact that I did do this,
Mhm.
that I did make such a huge change in so many people's lives,
Mhm.
the people that were closest to me. And I want to be able to make good of it personally,
Mhm.
me, and to model that just for my little family, but also for the larger good, for the larger community. I think it's important and I think it's necessary. And we do that, and you're doing it. And I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for you for
Thank you.
doing that, for helping people, but for helping put the stories out there.
Mhm. Thank you.
Because
Yeah.
we don't, what else? When I was first starting, I thought I was crazy. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I thought I was alone. I was crazy. What is this?
Yeah.
Until you start hearing other people's stories, you
Yep.
don't know. And
That
so for
was
people
yeah.
like you, I'm so internally grateful and I want to do my part. That's why I put my messy story out
Mhm.
there so that
Yeah.
people know they're not alone.
That was why I started my YouTube channel. It was partially for me,
Yeah.
but also due to that, I was like, I felt like I was the only person in the world experiencing this.
Yeah.
But logic told me I was like, I can't be. Like, I
Yeah.
can't be the only person in the entire world who's experiencing this. So I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna share it and I'm gonna put it out there. And oh yeah. And so it was at the time like almost therapeutic for me to just talk about it, but then the amount of women that kept going, oh my gosh, me too, like, oh my gosh, me too,
Yeah.
like I thought I was all alone and your story is like so
Yeah.
helpful. And so yeah, I was like,
It's
it's
amazing.
mm-hmm,
It's amazing. And I do that in the book. It's like every time I would meet somebody,
yeah,
they were another late bloomer, late in life, or whatever you want to call
yeah,
us.
yeah,
And
uh-huh,
at some point I go, I see we're not an anomaly,
no,
like we're everywhere. And
yeah,
so this happens. And it's men also.
yeah, yes, I think
It's
that's
not
huge
just
too.
women, it is
Mm-hmm,
also men. And
mm-hmm,
so it's so important to, in this community to continue to encourage, to share
mm-hmm,
our stories, especially when there's such a huge force coming
mm-hmm.
up, breathing down our necks, trying to make us don't talk about this or go
Yeah,
away or change or be different.
yeah,
No, get louder, talk more,
mm-hmm.
you
And that's
know,
what so my wife went through this too, and just as us together, it's our whole goal, and my whole goal has always just been, which goes back to even the kid talk of all of this, like just that lead by example, like there might be certain things that like I can't radically change, but I'm like, but if I just show up and lead by example, I live my life and I tell my story and I'm not ashamed and I don't hide, like it's always my goal that that will inspire others to go, oh, okay, she's doing it, it's okay, like everything seems to be all right, like maybe I
right,
can do that, that just touching, even if it's one person that
right,
goes, wait, I can do that too, and
right.
to let
Yeah.
them be who they are, that's always just been like my goal. So
Yeah,
mhm.
absolutely, and it's a great goal, and you're doing a
Yeah,
great job,
thank you, I
and,
appreciate that.
it's needed. It is needed. I remember the first time that I finally found a book
Yeah.
that, had other people's, like, vignettes, their stories,
Mhm.
and it's as if somebody just took my thoughts and my feelings and put it on page with different people's names, and it was just so amazing
Like
to
validating, it's just like, oh,
validating.
like yeah.
Yeah, to know that this is a thing and you're not alone and you're not
Mhm.
necessarily crazy,
Crazy, yeah.
and I had spoken to a man that this happened to, and he said it, his experience was the same thing. He thought he was crazy. So it's not just
Mhm.
unique to us. We need to know that this happens
Yeah.
and it happens a lot and you can get through it.
Mhm.
But you should have support.
Yeah.
You should know other people that have gone through it or are going through it. You should
Mhm.
have people like what you do to provide that support
Yeah.
from the other side, that guidance or that
Mhm.
reassurance that, when you hit that when, I said 2 steps forward, sometimes 3 steps back, to say, "Okay,
Mhm.
you fell
It's
down.
okay. It's all
It's okay."
right. Like, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Like,
It's gonna
it's all right. We can. It's like, as a mom guiding like a kid. It's okay. You fell down. It's all
Yeah.
right. We're gonna stand back up. We're gonna brush it off, and we're gonna, keep going.
Yeah,
So
it's that
yeah,
Frankenstein walk, when they're
yeah,
first starting to
yeah.
walk and, they can't
Little
get up,
drunken
then they get
sailor
up.
doing their like,
Love that, right? It's
no, so
okay.
cute.
It's okay. And then the next thing
Yep,
you know, they're running around, and
yep,
it doesn't mean they're never gonna fall again,
yeah.
you know, they do. But
Hmm.
it gets a little better,
Yep.
and, fewer and, between, and it gets better. And it's good to have this kind of support for people that are first going through it, because it is scary. I will say
Yeah.
that. It
Oh,
is
yeah.
scary. Um,
Hmm.
it is. You
Everything is changing. It's scary. Change is nobody likes change. Nobody
Right.
is like, oh yeah, a change is coming.
Right. Exactly. It's
And it's
scary.
a
And
big
it,
change. Yeah.
you can stay where you are, the devil you know,
Hmm.
but there's consequences to that. I'm not saying, I mean, I know lots of people that stayed where they are, they disappear, they go back into that world.
Yeah.
Um, but, change is hard, but staying put is also hard if you're
Hmm.
not happy.
Yeah.
And,
It's
and
it kind of comes down to a choice. We talk about that. You can choose to stay. You're going to choose hard no matter what. It's hard to stay
yes.
because you'll deal with that inner turmoil and that conflict. And I feel like it is a long-term toll on your mental health because it's just always weighing on you, or I feel like the other is like it's hard because you have to, like you said, almost blow things up and start over. And that's hard and that's scary too. But it
Yeah.
you have to pick which one you want to do. And
Yeah, and there's no
yeah.
guarantees, and yes, change is hard, but, at the end of the day, all we have is change. Everything is always changing,
Yeah.
and I don't know that it's change that's so hard, but it's scary because it's unpredictable. There's an unknown, and we
Mhm.
feel like we are out of control. And
Yeah.
maybe for a little while we are. Maybe we're free falling for a little while,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that is scary. I mean, I'm a person, I don't like heights or roller coasters, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not, a thrill seeker. And so when you're free falling in any way, yeah, that's
Mhm.
hard. But we do it. And if you look back, we've always been doing it one way or another.
Yeah.
There's always, like change is just infused in our lives, whether we recognize it
Mhm.
or not. Good,
Mhm.
bad, we're always adjusting. We're cats,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
we're always adjusting.
Oh, I love it. Well, just kind of wrap things up, but thank you so much for doing this. Where I'll put links below this video, to like your book and like your Instagram and stuff.
Sure.
Where are all the places that people can find your book?
So the book itself, anywhere where you find books, I
Okay,
just
awesome.
released
Mhm.
the audiobook, so which
Okay,
gave me the opportunity to do a little bit of, I took a scalpel to it, edited it a little bit. But that's out there. That's brand new.
awesome.
And so they can get the audiobook, which is great. They can get the ebook. I think there's still some print copies of the book
Okay,
anywhere. We love our independent bookstores, but Barnes and Noble, Amazon, they all have them. The audiobook also anywhere where you get those. I do have a website
okay,
that's in desperate need of getting updated, but it is there. And Facebook and Instagram are my go-tos.
awesome.
Those are where I pop my head in now and then when I'm not on a social media diet.
Perfect. Yep. I'll put those links below. I'll find them and make sure I got them right. But yeah, so if
Perfect.
anybody wants to learn more and get your book and hear more details about your story, so
That'd be
yeah,
great. That'd
that's
be great.
awesome.
And
So
thank you. Really, I so appreciate what you do, just to, again, be an ambassador for this community and to help people. It's so
thank
important, and I
there'll be
commend
links
you.
below for that too. So yeah, those couple things that I'm really
Yes.
focusing now are community and then offering one-on-one supports, which yeah, from the feedback I've gotten, it's been very helpful, like just like what you said, to connect with others, to
Yeah.
know that other people are going through it. And then yeah, we do like weekly calls and yeah, to really
Terrific.
have that
You're
support there. So
you're in the Midwest, is that right?
yeah, yeah, in Missouri, outside St.
Okay.
Louis.
Do
So
you ever come out east?
We haven't. My wife has family that lives on the East Coast, but we have never been out there to see them in the time that we've been together.
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about it.
The only
So
reason I'm thinking is because so Provincetown, if you
yeah.
haven't been,
Hmm.
put that on your list for sure. But there's another woman out there, Anne Marie Zanzel. Are you familiar with her?
Okay. I haven't heard her, I don't
So
think.
she's also in this space,
Okay.
and she also does counseling. She's out in Tennessee,
Mm,
and I don't, she offers services similar,
yeah,
because she's also a late in life person.
that's
She's coming
awesome.
to Provincetown. So in October is what's called Women's Week, and it's the 40th
Oh,
anniversary of
okay.
Women's Week. I'll just, it looks like this. I don't know if you can see
Yeah,
that.
that's
And I
awesome.
know she invited me. She's coming out and she's doing a group or some activities. It's just planting a seed for you if you ever
Yeah.
want to do a retreat.
Oh, I've thought about that. I've heard people, like even some of the women that I've worked with have been like, we should do a retreat sometime and like do like a getaway. So yeah,
Yeah, so that's a great location. It's a fabulous spot,
yeah,
and Women's Week in and of itself is just wonderful. And I know that they're
look into
scheduling
that. Yeah.
lots of really great stuff for this particular anniversary, the 40th anniversary.
Okay.
Um, and I know you've got kids, they have family week coming up, but if you were
Hmm.
ever to do a retreat like Anne Marie's doing and other people have
Yeah.
talked about doing, put that on your
Okay.
bucket list.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to do. So,
Yeah,
okay.
you'd love
I
it.
know I love always making the connections and be great to get a whole group of people with, have been experienced, but then who are still going through it. And yeah, it would be
I
awesome.
think you're always going through it at some
I think
point.
so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even my wife and I, you know, I always kind of say like we're on the other side of it all, but there's still so much that you talk through and learn from, and things that randomly come up and you go, well, like what about this, or did you ever feel this way or think about that. We continue to have those conversations with each other. So
Right. And also, as moms, because
yeah.
with the kids and the milestones, there's
Yeah.
something that's always going to tug on you.
Hmm.
And so you're always kind of, out there with it.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, this is wonderful. It was great speaking with
Yeah,
you.
great to
I
have you
enjoyed
too.
this
Thank you
time.
so much. Yes.
Thank
So
you for having me.
you're welcome. All right, well, have a good day. All
You as well.
right.
Stay in touch.
Bye.